I'm Matt,
And I'm Ray.
and we're your host, and today we're having our first episode.
Inside the Mind of a Teen. Conversations with experts across medicine and education, and today we have Dr. Cassie Chu. Previously an adolescent medical doctor, she's been working in adolescents for many years and she has much expertise on the subject.
One of the best in the field. Dr. Chu, it's nice to meet you. I would love to get an introduction on your specialty and maybe like why you went into it and your expertise. So,
Absolutely. So my name is Dr. Cassie Chu. I am a physician trained in pediatric, adolescent, and preventive medicine. So those are three distinct areas. I chose adolescent medicine when I was completing my pediatric training because I felt as though pediatricians naturally gravitated towards the cute young children, and the adolescents were almost like a neglected niche. Yes, everyone's competently trained to care for them, but I think pediatricians in general tend to naturally gravitate towards the cute little kids, and I felt that someone needed to take care of adolescents and young adults because they have very real health concerns, very real emotional concerns. I just wanted to be a part of their health journey.
wow, that's great. What do you think it's like dealing with adolescents versus the cute little kids? Would you say like there's differences how you got to interact with them, what to expect from them?
Yes, absolutely. So really, adolescents are on a journey from childhood to adulthood. And so what is unique about encounters with them is that we want to help them learn how to communicate about their health concerns, their health history. And that's different from the pediatric population where a parent is often in the room telling us the history. So I think that's a main difference is who is the historian. And so often what happens in the adolescent encounter is that I'll introduce myself to the parent and to the patient, but there'll be time when I just speak with the patient alone. And this really is an opportunity to help the adolescent patient begin to communicate their own health information, their own health concerns. And then at the end of the encounter, we bring the parent back into the room. So it's kind of like a full circle moment, whereas in the pediatric world, it really is parents telling us what the concerns are and us addressing them in the patient.
Wow, so there's kind of like a transition where as a kid, you always have the parent in the room and they talk about your symptoms, what's going on. And then it looks like in adolescent medicine, you're going to have both where, the parent isn't in the room. And then as an adult, you got to be in the room yourself, unless you have a translator. But I didn't know that. I think that's really cool. I've never really been in the doctor's office as an adolescent. So, yeah, I was always scared because I thought my parents would hear everything and they're going to get mad at something. But, that's really cool that you let the adolescents speak for themselves for an instance. But, there's some things that we wanted to talk about in our little podcast. Some of them would be about mental health. Some would be about more the biological changes during adolescence. And then some of them would be that social and familial development. I think maybe we could start with the social and familial development. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So I think a first question would be, have you observed a connection between bullying and adolescents' physical or emotional development?
Yes, I have. I think it depends on the individual adolescent and their level of resilience. Some adolescents can encounter bullies and they're very confident about, and I'm just going to pause for a moment because I actually can't see you anymore, Matthew. I don't know if there's a problem with the video. There you go. Now I
Yeah.
can see you.
Sorry about that. My camera's not the best. All right.
Uh, so it depends, I guess, getting back to the question, it depends on the individual adolescent. There are some adolescents who are very resilient, and they encounter bullying and they just keep moving forward. They have perhaps a more confident sense of self, or just inherent resilient properties, whereas some adolescents who are struggling can really be affected in a negative way to bullying, and this can lead to emotional issues, which in turn can lead to physical issues if if it's to a severe extent. For example, if an adolescent is bullied and becomes depressed, they may engage in self-harm behaviors. If they're being bullied about their weight, they may dramatically change the way that they eat, and that can create biological or physical problems.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are some of the early warning signs to somebody who is like an adolescent that's struggling with bullying or these like social familial problems?
Right. So I think there's a number of different things that we can see. I think increased irritability, maybe increased isolation. The teenager or adolescent may have a sustained low mood. They may get into arguments at home. Their grades may suffer. It really is kind of widespread what could happen. I think the thing that unites all of these symptoms together is that we just need to have adults, parents, physicians, just anyone within the sphere of this adolescent to be aware when there are changes that take someone from their baseline to something a bit different. So just being aware of who the adolescent is and how they might be changing, it can help us quickly identify problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing about parenting. So, how do you think an authoritative parenting style versus an indulgent parenting style will interact with this kind of bullying that adolescents go through quite a bit?
Well, I think extremes of parenting are never necessarily good, and in fact should be discouraged. At least I discourage them in my clinics if they become a parent. I think in the case of the kind of authoritative parent, the teenager may, depending on their personality, be hesitant to share the struggles that they're going through. In the case of the indulgent parent, the teenager may feel like they're left on their own in a different way to handle the problem, and so the extremes are never are rarely good. I think it's more of matching parenting style to personality of the adolescent or teenager, and again, the key being is that parents parenting in such a way that adolescents feel like they can come to them with the big problems.
So you think like in some parenting styles, the adolescents just feel like they can't go to their parents? Because I feel like that's kind of how I was when I was younger. If there was anything that happened at school, I never went to my parents because basically their first answer would be like, oh, you shouldn't be friends with them. Oh, tell the teacher. And, like as an adolescent, those things are not, it's never that easy. You don't want to be the guy that's always telling on the teacher. You don't want to be the guy with like no friends, what if it's somebody that's kind of your friend that's doing the bullying, and usually it is. So it's never that easy. What do you think are ways that parents can get their kids to like actually like tell them what's going on?
Right. I think first parents should be around. It's not necessarily quantity, but the quality of the time that they are present and intentional in their interaction with their teenagers. So I think just being present when they can be, also kind of locking in not the judgmental tone or like no indications of judgment, because that's a sure as heck way to like close doors, is that if the teenager is going to feel judged. And then I think really it's kind of tailoring or working the conversation so that the teenager or adolescent feels included in the problem solving, instead of parents saying you do this or you do that, because the parents may not really understand the whole dynamic, but the parent asking the adolescent or teenager like, well, how do you think we should approach this? We are a team. Like, how should we approach this problem? Like, what are you thinking? And then from that, it becomes more of a partnership, a guided partnership, but nonetheless a partnership between parent and child.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah, I've never heard an answer like that. It's usually, I feel like parents mostly feel like they're kind of their kid's boss, even up to like later ages, like 16, 17, 18. And I always got mad at my parents for being like that. I think even to this day, they're very bossy around me. But I think that's, if there's kind of like joint decision making, that would make adolescents feel a lot better, right?
Right now, certainly the younger the teenager, the more guiding of the conversation the parent will do. But as the teenager demonstrates the ability to, think about, explore, critique the situation, then the parents really are just guides, saying, well, what do you think? And what are the benefits of doing it this way? And can you think of any bad things that might come from approaching it this way? Just kind of more of a guide in later adolescence / young adulthood versus when they're younger, and perhaps more of a role for parents. But again, as each teenager or adolescent is different, I think if parents just generally remember that even a young adolescent is an emerging adult, and so empowering them to the extent possible.
Dr. Shu, I have a question. There has been an increase in mental health issues regarding adolescents. What can you say about this, and what do you think is really the cause of this increase?
Right. Well, I think it's what we call multifactorial. Like, there's many different factors that play a role in it, and I'm certainly not going to be able to be all inclusive in exactly all the causes, but what I think is that the advent of a lot of social media use in its many different and varied forms, I think family fracture, either advertent or inadvertent, like just really busy parents or family situations in which there's only one parent or one very busy parent. I think increased exposure to violence. I mean, those are just some of the highlights of it. But I think those are certainly some of the reasons why we're seeing an increase in behavioral health issues among adolescents.
Yeah, that's very, can be starting to be a serious issue. How do you think social media plays a role in this? And is there any additional things like maybe the healthcare field can do to manage these side effects?
Right. So I think with social media, it's a combination of things. Like, I think it's the isolation. I mean, it seems counterintuitive. Social media is like we're connecting to other people, but it's really through a platform, through a media, versus like one-on-one talking with and interacting with other peers, teenagers, that type of stuff. I also think it's just the culture of social media, like likes and shares and influencing. I think that it's the very real worry about keeping up with the rest of what you perceive is going on, like keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with what other influencers or you think your peers are doing. I think a way specifically with social media to combat it in terms of what we as healthcare providers can do is to start early in initiating conversations with parents and their children, even before they hit adolescence. Like, what does good social media use look like? And as teenagers progress through early, middle, and late adolescence, like really trying to frame and to guide them and then ultimately include them in how we can have responsible use of social media and to have a right-sized understanding and view of what it is and what it can be used for and how to balance it with other things going on in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think keeping up with the Joneses is a good analogy from like what I've seen. But let's like pivot here and talk about early puberty. So, you said there have been multiple causes of early puberty. Can you go a little bit more into that?
Right. So, as with any population or population undergoing a stage, like there's a bell curve, and there are some people who are just naturally going to start a little bit earlier than others, and then like that 2.5%, and then you have like the majority of the bell curve where they all kind of start to develop around the same time, and then you have some what we call late bloomers. So it just could be who they are in terms of their genetic makeup, and their parents will tell you a history of like going through puberty a bit earlier than everyone else, versus like if there can be dietary causes, like if you consume an excessive amount of some type of foods, it can cause hormonal changes, which in turn can lead to signs of early puberty. And then there are, in another category, true pathophysiological conditions in which there are problems in our biochemical pathways, which then lead to early puberty. And so a physician's job is to figure out what is something that we can reassure parents about, or when, and also when it's time to intervene, either through change of diet or through medications or further workup.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I wonder what some of those foods are, because I think when I was younger, I was worried about this stuff, and I don't know why, but I wonder what some of those foods are and how maybe influences testosterone or estrogen, those things.
Yeah, so one, it's really interesting. There have been case reports of tofu, increased soy, causing signs of early puberty. Let me get back to you on it's tofu or soybeans.
I think it's probably
tofu,
soy.
So
but...
we had a pediatric. We actually did a case report of that of someone, a young lady who was showing signs of early pubertal development, and it was because she was consuming an excess amount of soy.
Wow. Yeah, I thought that was a myth, honestly. I kept hearing it's actually like a pretty controversial thing on like the whole internet, like the dieting, like, that culture on the internet, whether or not soy would increase estrogen, but that's really interesting if it causes
And
early
then
puberty.
we saw physiological signs of early puberty, and so it's really interesting. And so really, rather than the specific, it's the whole idea of anything in excess from a dietary perspective can potentially cause problems. So we always want to like approach foods just in general in
Mhm.
moderation.
Yeah. And now switching topics again, real quick about the brain, because the brain is very important in this process. So I wanted to know what synaptic pruning is. I think that's something that you'll learn in like medical school. It'll be very interesting to hear what that is about and how it relates to puberty.
Sure. So the big change during puberty is the position and role that the prefrontal cortex plays. And so think of it as kind of like the brake on the system. So, like, when we make decisions, most of us, once we've gotten past adolescence, like we think about it. So we have this idea and then we stop and we think about it. And then if we still think it's a good idea, we'll do it. Well, in adolescence, this is the whole point. I get part of the point is that this process is maturing. And until it matures, like the prefrontal cortex, another part of the brain, which we call the limbic system, which is kind of like the emotion / reward center, is in charge. And this leads to those like quintessential impulsive behaviors and emotional swings that we see in adolescence. So synaptic pruning is when some unneeded nerve connections are eliminated while ones that are frequently used are maintained. So it's really just kind of making things very efficient and making them, I guess efficiency is the best word. So is part of the process that happens during adolescence, and it can actually take until 25, 26 for this whole process to happen, so that the prefrontal cortex is the one guiding our decisions and actions and kind of curtailing any impulses that we may have. So there's like a physiological reason why like teenagers do crazy things. Like their brain is still coming together.
Yeah. I always knew that it was something with the brain, but I never knew like the details of it. So thank you for sharing that. And I wonder if it's a myth or not, whether or not males tend to have this development a little bit later, because I heard that there is a difference, there isn't. What are your thoughts?
Generally, boys develop later. They just do. And so that's certainly a part of the process. And so you have that to fall back on too as well.
Oh, true. Yeah. I think there's one more topic we really want to quickly touch on. And this is going to be about collaboration between healthcare professionals and the adolescents. You went into this a little bit earlier, but this will be more on like a public health scale. But in general, what school-based interventions do you think are the most effective for adolescent well-being, getting to those problems?
Sure. So what I think is based on what the CDC, our Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention, has already determined to be the case. And so the following that are school-based interventions that are evidence-based, aka effective, are increasing mental health literacy among adolescents. And what that means is that adolescents understand that they have emotions, that sometimes those emotions can cause them to feel sad. So it's just like all the jargon surrounding mental health and how we take care of ourselves. So that health literacy, or ability to understand those ideas, is important. We also want to promote mindfulness. There are programs that promote mindfulness among adolescents. We also want to promote social, emotional, and behavioral learning. We want to connect students / adolescents to staff and families. That interconnectedness is really important. We want to provide psychosocial skills training and cognitive behavioral interventions. And so the way to think of CBT, cognitive behavioral interventions more than therapy, so like let's call it CBI, is that adolescents learn to kind of work through their emotions, like the sources of them, what they are, their sources, what the impacts of them could be, and how to reconstruct things in terms of how they feel or how they perceive the world around them. And we also want to support staff well-being as well, because those are the people on the front lines helping these adolescents / young adults with these issues.
Yeah, of course. And I think when I was talking to you earlier, you mentioned something about class sizes. What do you think about class sizes? Do you think they matter in terms of the quality that of like care that adolescents get?
Absolutely, I think so. I think the lower the student to teacher ratio, the better, because students are, I think they're more engaged. I think that the teacher is more engaged. They know what's going on at a more individual level versus when you have a larger class size. anecdotally, my mom was a teacher for like 35, 40 years. And during that time, her classes got much larger. It started out like her versus 10 to 12 students. And by the time she was done, it was her and 30 or 35 other students. And you just can't give that. You can't be as intentional and present with a larger group as you are with a smaller group. And I think our adolescents potentially suffer because of that. You're just a number. I wouldn't say just a number, but you're more of a number than an individual, right?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that. Class size has been getting bigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the Uncovered podcast. We very much appreciate your answers. And I mean, if the professor has anything to say about this, I'll let you know. He said he'll probably learn a thing or two from you.
I doubt it. Your professors are very, very smart people, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a class on adolescent psychology, so very interesting. They have, like very specialized classes, even for something like this. I actually took it because I thought of something like adolescent medicine myself. What if this is something that I want to go into? Maybe just to learn more about adolescence.
So I'm very partial, of course, but I really, really enjoy working with adolescents and just to see their emotional and physical development over time and to really see them walk through that transition from childhood to adulthood. It's just really exciting. And I think our future is in good hands because these adolescents are just wicked smart. They're very thoughtful. They have ideas about how to solve the problems that are kind of befuddling us. So I am really excited to see what this next generation, these next generations do with the problems that we're dealing with. That includes your generation. To whom much is given, much is expected. I think you're going to do great things.
Great. Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for being on the Uncovered podcast.
Thank you so much for coming. We had a great time talking to you today.
No, thank you.
Really
thank
appreciate
you for your patience. We physicians are introverts by nature. And so, being on a video, we're like, whoa. So thank you.